The sun had barely begun to set over Earth when the first message came through, a sharp, cold transmission that cut through the static of the radio like a blade. "Humanity has been judged," the voice crackled, distorted but clear. "Prepare for extinction." Captain Mara Greer gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles turning white. The message was not a threat, it was a decree. It came from the Ola, the most advanced and feared species in the galaxy. They had wiped out entire civilizations before, and now their gaze was set on Earth. Mara glanced around the command center. Her crew was silent, their faces lit by the pale glow of their monitors. She could feel the weight of their eyes on her, waiting for direction. She was their leader, their guide in this unknown conflict, but even her confidence faltered in the face of such an unprovoked challenge. "We're not going down without a fight," Mara muttered, more to herself than anyone else. Her voice, though steady, was tinged with an undercurrent of disbelief. Lieutenant Owen Carter, her second-in-command, turned his seat to face her. His dark eyes were sharp, focused, calculating. "What are they waiting for, Captain? Why attack now, after all these years?" Mara's lips pressed into a thin line. "They think we're weak," she said. "They don't understand us. They think we're just another species to annihilate." Carter leaned forward, his hands clenched into fists. "Then it's time they learned what humanity is capable of." A tension-filled silence followed. They both knew the stakes, this wasn't just another conflict. If the Ola succeeded, humanity would be erased. It wasn't a possibility, it was a certainty. The Ola had been a shadow in the galaxy for centuries, their actions swift and merciless. Entire planets had fallen beneath their mighty fleets without even a warning shot. But Mara had been in the service long enough to know one thing: humans didn't go down easily. They adapted. They fought. And they survived. But this was different. The Ola were not just a rival. They were a power of unimaginable strength, and humanity's defense systems had never been tested against something like them. Mara leaned back in her chair, trying to suppress the rising panic in her chest. "Prepare the fleet for a defensive maneuver," she ordered, her voice now filled with an undeniable determination. "And get me Commander Helmsworth." The ship's comm officer, Lieutenant Lana Fisher, immediately responded. "Commander Helmsworth on the line, Captain." "Put him through," Mara replied. The screen blinked to life, and the face of Commander Dylan Helmsworth appeared, his features stern and set. "Captain," he said, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 battles. "We've received the message. How do you suggest we respond?" Mara didn't hesitate. "We show them what happens when they underestimate us. We fight like hell." Helmsworth's expression softened for a split second. "We'll do what we can, Captain. But this is unlike anything we've ever faced." "I know," Mara said quietly. "But it's the only choice we have." Meanwhile, across the vast emptiness of space, a shadow moved. The Ola fleet, its black ships gleaming under distant stars, drifted toward Earth with an eerie calm. The alien warships were far more advanced than anything humanity had ever seen. Their technology was capable of wiping out entire civilizations with a flick of a switch, and their tactics, cold and precise, were designed to leave nothing but ashes in their wake. At the helm of the Ola flagship stood Commander Slath, the ruthless strategist behind countless conquests. He was a being of ancient power, with eyes that glowed with the intensity of 1,000 stars. His mission was clear: destroy humanity before they could become a threat. But as he observed the tiny blue planet before him, something stirred in his mind. Something unaccounted for. The humans, fragile, short-lived, and primitive as they were, had a resilience that intrigued him. He had witnessed civilizations bend and break, but the humans? They never gave up. Slath's lips curled into a thin smile. "Let them prepare," he muttered to no one in particular. "They will soon learn the futility of resistance." Back on Earth, Mara was making her final preparations. She had no illusions about the battle ahead. The Ola were a superior force, and the odds were stacked against them. But one thing she knew for certain was this: humans didn't fight for the promise of victory. They fought for survival. We won't be defeated, Mara said, her voice steady despite the overwhelming odds. We are humanity. And we will give them a lesson they won't forget. As the fleet moved into position, the hum of engines reverberated through the hull. Each person on board knew their role. They were ready to face the Ola, to give their all, no matter the cost. The final countdown began. In a distant corner of space, Commander Slath watched the small blue planet draw closer, his confidence unwavering. Earth's fate was sealed. But there was one thing the Ola had failed to understand about humanity. When you push them into a corner, when you think you've broken them, they rise up, not just to fight, but to win. Mara Greer wasn't about to let Earth go down without a fight. She was about to show the Ola just how powerful the human spirit truly was. Mara stared at the holographic map of the solar system, her gaze fixed on the red dots indicating the Ola fleet's steady approach. The image was eerily calm, too calm for the reality of the impending battle. The fleet was massive, each ship larger than anything humanity had ever built, and their weapons systems could obliterate Earth in mere minutes. Her breath hitched, but she forced herself to take another steadying inhale. There was no time for doubt now. The crew was already in motion, executing the carefully planned defensive strategies. Every man and woman aboard the flagship was determined, focused, but Mara knew that none of them fully understood the extent of the danger. They hadn't seen the Ola in action. "Captain, you need to see this," Carter's voice broke through her thoughts. Mara turned to him, and the flickering lights in the control room reflected the tension in his eyes. He stood beside the communications terminal, his fingers typing swiftly, scrolling through streams of incoming data. "What's the situation?" Mara asked, her voice firm but filled with urgency. Carter glanced up. "The Ola are almost within range. They're deploying drones, thousands of them. They're targeting our defense satellites." Mara's heart skipped a beat. "Drones?" "Autonomous combat units," Carter replied, "weapons of mass destruction, all controlled by their fleet's main AI. If we don't disable them before they reach the satellites, our defense systems will be useless." A cold sweat began to form on the back of Mara's neck. She had expected a direct assault from the Ola, but this was something new. Humanity hadn't faced anything like it before, no one had. "Then we have no choice," Mara said, steeling herself. "Prepare for countermeasures. We'll need every ship in the fleet to engage." As she moved toward the communications console to speak with Commander Helmsworth, her mind raced. The Ola were clearly prepared for this battle, and every moment they delayed made victory seem more impossible. The weight of Earth's survival pressed against her chest. "Captain," Carter's voice was tight. "The Ola just transmitted a new message." Mara's breath caught in her throat. Another threat? Another declaration of doom? She looked over at Carter, who was now scanning the incoming transmission. His face hardened as the words flashed on the screen. "We have come to extinguish your light. You are an aberration in the universe. Surrender now, or be eradicated." "Damn," Mara muttered under her breath. The Ola's arrogance was suffocating, but she refused to let it break her resolve. She tapped her communicator, her voice unwavering. "Helmsworth, we need every advantage we can get. Prepare your team to launch evasive strikes. Get our fleet in position for a counteroffensive." The familiar face of Commander Dylan Helmsworth flickered to life. His blue eyes were calm, but Mara knew better than to mistake that calmness for certainty. "Understood, Captain. We've already initiated evasive maneuvers. But I don't need to tell you this is going to be close." Mara's gaze turned back to the map. The Ola ships were no longer just a threat, they were an unstoppable force. "We can't afford to hold back," she said. "Our survival depends on taking them out before they take us out." Helmsworth nodded grimly. "We'll do what we can, Captain. But you should know, the Ola don't just attack. They target the heart of their enemies. They'll come after you." A chill ran through Mara, but she didn't let it show. "Let them come. They'll learn what happens when they push humanity too far." The communication ended, and Mara stood still, staring at the hologram, her pulse racing in her ears. The Ola were cold, calculating, and relentless. But they hadn't yet faced humanity's full fury. The ship's engines hummed louder, the metallic vibration sending a jolt through the deck beneath her feet. It was time. The Ola fleet was now within range. Mara could feel the rising tension in the air as the crew braced for impact. She could hear the rapid clicks of keyboard keys, the shuffling of boots against the metal floor, the hum of machinery in the background. Every sound was a reminder of the storm that was about to break. "We're in position, Captain," Carter said, his voice steady. He met her eyes, his resolve clear. "Ready for the first strike." Mara nodded, clenching her fists. "All hands, prepare for battle. This is the moment we fight for Earth." The countdown began, each second stretching longer than the last. The silence that followed felt deafening, as if the whole universe held its breath. The Ola might be powerful, but they underestimated one thing: humanity's capacity for defiance. Suddenly, alarms blared, a high-pitched screech that sent a wave of urgency through the ship. "They've fired," Carter shouted, eyes wide. The massive Ola warship launched a devastating burst of energy toward the Earth fleet. "Brace for impact," Mara screamed. She gripped the edge of the command console, ready to face whatever came next. The world seemed to shift around her. Time slowed as the blast hurtled toward them, the force of it enough to shatter even the most hardened ships. But Mara wasn't about to let Earth fall. She didn't need to say anything more. Her crew was already moving, launching countermeasures, calculating their next strike. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the Ola fleet, Commander Slath's eyes narrowed. This wouldn't be as easy as he thought. Humanity had just begun to fight back. Mara's fingers trembled as she gripped the command console. The blast from the Ola warship had hit just shy of their flagship, but the sheer force of the shockwave rattled every system, throwing alarms into a symphony of red warnings across the deck. The screens before her flickered, the electrical buzz in the air palpable. "Damage report," she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Shields holding, Captain," Carter's voice rang through the comms, but his words were clipped, strained. "Hull integrity at 90%. Power levels fluctuating. We've got system failures across the board, but we're still operational." Mara let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. For now, they were still standing. But the Ola hadn't shown their full hand yet. She could sense it, like a predator waiting to strike again. "Helmsworth, what's the status on the fleet?" Mara asked, her eyes scanning the incoming data streams. The Ola were still advancing, deploying more drones, more than they'd ever encountered before. Thousands, possibly millions. "Captain, we're in a bind," Commander Helmsworth replied, his expression flickering on screen. "The drones are coming fast, and our smaller ships can't keep up. I recommend we concentrate fire on the Ola flagship. If we can knock out their command ship, the drones will lose coordination." Mara nodded, her mind working through the options. Every move they made had consequences, but Helmsworth was right. The Ola were a well-oiled machine, taking out their leader could throw them into chaos. "Agreed. All ships, focus fire on the Ola flagship. We're going in hard." The battle was relentless. The flagship shuddered again as a barrage of energy pulses hammered against its shields, but the crew remained focused, keeping their steady rhythm of retaliation. The decks below Mara were filled with the sound of boots rushing to stations, the hum of weapons charging, and the deep, vibrating growl of the ship's engines pushing them faster, closer to their target. "Captain," Carter's voice came through again, tight with strain. "Our weapon systems are coming back online, but we can't afford to miss. We need precision fire." Mara's hand hovered over the console. They had one chance to make this work. One shot to make the Ola feel the weight of human defiance. "Ready the main cannons," Mara ordered, her voice steady. "Get me a clear shot." Carter's response was swift, fingers dancing over the controls. "Locked on." "We're ready." Mara's heart drummed in her chest as the seconds ticked by, each one stretching longer than the last. Every fiber of her being was focused on that one target, her mind running through the potential outcomes. They had one shot, and if they failed, she wouldn't think about that. Not now. Fire. A thunderous roar echoed through the flagship as the main cannons unleashed their full force. The ship groaned under the pressure, but it held firm. The energy blast sped through space, its trajectory perfect, a sharp streak of light against the void. It was headed straight for the Ola flagship. But just before impact, a sudden distortion rippled through the battlefield. The Ola flagship shimmered, and the blast veered off course, missing its target by a hair. What the hell? Carter cursed. They've activated some kind of energy field, Helmsworth's voice came through. It's a defense mechanism we haven't seen before. Mara's jaw tightened. They're adapting. We need to regroup in. Her words were cut off by the blaring of another alarm. This time, the warning was different, urgent, frantic. The proximity of Ola drones had increased exponentially. They're launching a counterattack. Carter shouted, his voice rising with panic. We've got drones inbound, too many to intercept. A cold knot formed in Mara's stomach. The Ola were closing in on all sides. The drones were fast, almost impossible to track without overwhelming their sensors. And each one carried a payload that could rip apart a ship with a single strike. Get me those evasive maneuvers, Mara snapped. Now. Brace for impact, came Carter's voice, but it was too late. The first wave of drones had already launched, their streaks of bright, lethal energy cutting through the vast expanse of space like a swarm of angry bees. Mara's heart clenched in her chest as she watched the first ship in the human fleet, a smaller destroyer, detonate in a fiery explosion. The shockwave rattled their ship, shaking the entire deck, sending jolts of panic through the crew. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and at this rate, they wouldn't last much longer. But Mara was not going to give in. Not now. Carter, focus on disabling the drones. We'll deal with the Ola flagship later. Right now, we need to survive. We can't outrun them, Carter muttered, fingers flying over his console. The drones are everywhere. Then we'll fight, Mara interrupted, turning her gaze to the screen where the swarm of drones was advancing. The human fleet was down to less than half its strength, but they would not fall. Get every last ship in formation, Mara ordered, her eyes locked on the chaos around them. We will hold the line. The crew moved with a precision born of necessity, coordinating their efforts, unleashing countermeasures as the drones encroached. But Mara knew the truth, they were on the verge of being overwhelmed. Suddenly, a voice came over the comms, cold and calculated. Captain Mara, your resistance is admirable. But it is futile. Mara's pulse quickened, her body stiffening. The Ola commander had just made his move, and now the real battle was about to begin. Mara's breath was steady, but her mind raced. The Ola commander's voice had cut through the chaos like a blade, calm, calculated, yet laced with a terrifying certainty. She stared at the view screen, watching as the Ola warship loomed, its dark silhouette cutting through the void, an impending shadow of destruction. Your resistance is futile, the voice echoed again, and Mara clenched her fists. The human spirit is strong, but not invincible. You will fall. But Mara refused to let fear take root. Her crew, battered but unbroken, continued their work, coordinating defenses, returning fire, and navigating the deadly swarm of drones that still threatened to overwhelm them. She had seen humanity fight against the odds before. The Ola might have underestimated them, but that would be their mistake. Carter, status report, Mara ordered, her voice unwavering despite the mounting pressure. Carter's voice came back, tinged with frustration but also a fierce determination. We've cleared a few drones, but the swarm's not letting up. Our shields are flickering. I'm rerouting power from non-essential systems, but... Do it, Mara interrupted. We're not backing down. Across the deck, the crew moved with practiced precision, responding to her words with unspoken loyalty. They had been through worse. They had lost more than they could count, but here they were, still fighting. But even as they pressed on, the Ola fleet advanced, a relentless force, unyielding. Their ships moved with perfect synchronization, the drones attacking in precise waves, their energy blasts creating flashes of light in the deep blackness of space. Every impact shook the human fleet, reverberating through the hulls of ships that, despite their resilience, were beginning to buckle. "We're losing ships, Captain," Helmsworth's voice was grim. "One of our frigates has been disabled. We can't keep this up." Mara's heart pounded in her chest. There was no time to second-guess. "Hold the line. Keep fighting. We have to show them that we won't surrender." She turned toward the command console, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the tactical data. The Ola flagship loomed closer, its massive form now clearly visible in their targeting systems. The hum of their weapons was almost deafening as energy blasts surged from both sides, the tension between survival and obliteration growing thicker with each passing moment. Suddenly, a deep rumble shook the ship, followed by an explosion from the forward decks. The lights flickered, then stabilized, but Mara could feel the sting of reality. They were running out of time. "Captain!" Carter shouted over the comms. "I need a clear order, now. I can't hold them off for much longer." Mara's mind raced. 1,000 options flashed before her eyes, each one leading to a different outcome. But one path stood out. If they could disable the Ola flagship, even temporarily, they might be able to force a retreat. "Focus everything on the Ola flagship. Get us a direct shot. We don't have time for half measures." Carter didn't hesitate. The ship's main weapons, struggling to maintain power under the constant barrage, surged back to life. The hum of energy coursing through the circuits, the heat radiating from the power core, Mara could feel it in her bones. This was it. The moment that would determine everything. She watched as their cannons charged, the brilliant blue light of the energy beams gathering strength, ready to be unleashed. The Ola warship's shield shimmered, rippling like the surface of a disturbed pond, but it was too late. Their weapon was locked, their target set. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The shot tore through the darkness, a streak of pure energy, hot and fast. It collided with the Ola flagship's shields, and for a moment, Mara's heart skipped a beat. But the shields held. The Ola were adapting faster than she'd anticipated. "No." She slammed a fist against the console. "We can't let them." Before she could finish, the Ola flagship shifted, its massive form seeming to pulse with an eerie energy. Another ripple in space distorted time and light, and suddenly, their targeting systems went dark. The Ola commander's voice was now clear, amplified by the ship's own systems, a mockery of her defiance. "You were foolish to think you could win," the Ola's voice came again, now overlaid with an unnatural distortion. "We have learned from your kind. This battle ends now." Mara's heart raced, adrenaline surging through her. She knew what this meant. The Ola were deploying something new, a weapon or technology unlike anything they had encountered. "Everyone, brace yourselves," she ordered, her voice tight. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. The Ola are pulling something new." As the crew scrambled to respond, the darkness outside the ship shifted. The Ola flagship's energy shield flickered, but now it was spreading outward, engulfing the entire battlefront. The waves of energy built up like a storm, and then, with a deafening crack, the first wave of destruction hit. It was as if the universe itself was shuddering. Mara's body was slammed back into her seat as their ship lurched violently. The decks groaned, alarms screeched, and lights flickered again, plunging the command center into darkness. "Captain!" Helmsworth shouted, his voice barely audible over the din. "We've lost." The comms cut off. Mara's breath hitched in her throat. Something had changed. Something irreversible. And it wasn't just the Ola they were fighting anymore. The human spirit had been tested time and again. But this time, Mara felt it. This was not just a battle for survival. This was a fight for everything.